Live from Arlington, Virginia, this is Transport Topics Newsmakers, the digital interview series that gives you access to candid conversations between industry experts and a veteran reporter. Here's your host, Dan Ronan.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Newsmakers from Transport Topics. I'm Dan Ronan, along with my TT colleague, Eugene Mulero. Eugene is a senior reporter in our government division. Eugene and I are pleased to host this conversation with leading figures in the transportation, trucking, freight, and logistics industries. Today, we have a great guest. We'll be talking also about a very important topic, the new infrastructure bill. We're joined by Congressman Peter DeFazio, the chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. First elected to Congress in 1986, Congressman DeFazio is the dean of the Oregon Congressional Delegation. He represents the state from the 4th District. He has forged a nearly unbreakable hold in a district that has been only marginally Democratic, and its voters have given their narrow support to both Republicans and Democrats for the White House during the last 20 years. The congressman is a veteran, having served in the United States Air Force Reserves, and after 36 years in the House of Representatives, Congressman DeFazio recently announced that he plans to retire at the end of this term next year. As we said, he's the chairman of the powerful Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Congressman DeFazio, welcome to Newsmakers. First, let's get your reaction to the rising price of fuel.
Dan, well, in tandem with the very high prices are extraordinary profits. Last year, the industry saw record profits. They bought back $9 billion worth of stock, and they paid, again, record dividends. This year, at the beginning of the year, they said they're going to buy back $22 billion worth of stock, and they're going to have, again, higher dividends and higher profits. And I just think maybe that the shareholders and Wall Street could share a little bit of the pain that our truckers and individuals are feeling at the pump here. I mean, I just really to have record dividends, huge stock buybacks at this time, I think is inappropriate. So I've proposed a bill that would, based on 2019 profits, refund half of the excess profits to consumers. There are a number of other versions of this kicking around out there. There's also discussion with Ways and Means about maybe taxing the stock buybacks and using that money to benefit fuel users. But there's a little uncertainty how we'll move forward. But otherwise, there's not much we can do. The president's releasing oil out of the SPRO. Other countries are tapping their reserves. The president's asking the industry to, pick up production a little bit. They had really, ramped down during the COVID recession and that. So, but this is really going to be tough. I mean, I can't imagine what it's going to mean for people in the trucking industry and for individuals.
A number of states, Congressman, real quickly before we get to Eugene, have started to move towards suspending their state fuel tax or the state sales tax, whatever it is. I know that this would be tied to money that goes into the Highway Trust Fund in some respects. Is that a good idea? Do you see that as something either on the federal or the state level of being a good way to do that, either suspending the 18.4% gas tax or the states suspending their taxes?
Well, of course, it's more on diesel. 18.4 cents is for individuals. I think diesel's 25. Mm-hmm. If you just suspended, just say, which has been introduced by someone else, a bill to suspend the tax for individuals for gasoline, that would be, if you got a $60 fill up, that would save you about $2. I mean, that's not insignificant. But it also would cost, if we did it for the balance of the year, it would cost the trust fund $23 billion of foregone investment, which coincidentally matches how much stock the industry wants to buy back this year. So I'd rather go after their stock buybacks than suspend the gas tax. And I very much worry that should we suspend these taxes, they'll never come back, and that'll be the end of federal partnership in the national transportation system.
Eugene?
Mr. Chairman, so where would examining the stakeholder perspective on fuel prices fit in your spring agenda? Do you anticipate or are planning to have a roundtable or a hearing with freight stakeholders or those who are affected by fuel prices? And I've been hearing of the potential of having joint hearings, between committees looking at fuel prices, energy and commerce, and then on the Senate side, they're talking about something like that. Is that something that you're planning on entertaining with your fellow chairmen of committees this spring? And also, if you give us a timeline separately on the water policy bill.
Sure. Well, I talked to Chairman Pallone. He's already inviting the oil CEOs in the week after next to his committee, Energy and Commerce. They have the predominant part of the jurisdiction. Of course, Ways and Means would have jurisdiction over the tax itself. I work with the users and the construction. So at this point, I'm going to, watch what happens in these other committees and look and see if we can come up with some kind of consensus on a way forward. There's a very vigorous debate. I mean, there's a number of Democrats are pushing to suspend the tax. There's another one with an excise tax on the barrel, and then there's mine. And also some discussion of taxes on dividends or stock buybacks. So it's just starting to gel. We'll see how it moves forward. On the Water Resources Development Bill, we held the member engagement hearing. We've had the portal open for, I think, 6 weeks for members to submit projects. I'm hoping to move that bill to the floor in May of this year. We also are going to be doing a Coast Guard reauthorization, hopefully in 2 weeks. We're looking for the first reauthorization of the Economic Development Administration in 17 years, maybe. And then the National Transportation Safety Board is also up for reauthorization. So we've got a lot on the plate for the coming year.
As you know, Congressman, the supply chain, something that most people had not heard of a year ago, is getting a lot of attention in the news. The Secretary of Transportation, Mr. Buttigieg, who we spoke to a couple of weeks ago, is out there talking about the need to modernize. The port folks, Los Angeles, Long Beach, up in your part of the country, Seattle, Tacoma, Georgia, all of them are stressing the need for this. Is the new infrastructure bill that you played a critical role in getting through the House and Senate, is that going to do some long-term benefit in terms of getting these supply chains unclogged? And as the Secretary points out, most of these companies that are involved in the supply chain, they are private industries, whether they're trucking industry or railroad or ports, the leaseholders at the ports. They're mostly, for the most part, they're private sector. Yeah,
well, there's a lot of, first off, last year I freed up the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund, $10 billion. They've been sitting in the Treasury since the collections were started under Ronald Reagan, to help catch up with our port infrastructure backlog, which deals with the new ships, the deeper drafts we need. It deals with jetties. There's also money in the IIJA or the BIF or whatever we're calling it now, the bipartisan infrastructure bill for ports to help deal with some of this issue. But a real key to me, and it's something that I'm going to be holding a hearing on later this year, is the breakdown between the movement of the freight, particularly on trucks, to the warehouses, and then the movement beyond. When you do a delivery, we used to have something called detention time, where if they made you sit there for 3 hours, they had to compensate you for it. That was done away with, which gives the receivers, the shippers, no incentive to staff up to efficiently, and adequately. They might have 15 ramps, but late at night, they'll only crew 2 of them because, hey, we don't care if you sit there all night. It doesn't cost us anything. Then the trucker runs out of time. And so the choice for the trucker is, I ran out of time. what am I going to do? Am I going to violate hours of service, or am I going to miss my next load? And this could be rationalized, and I think it might take an economic incentive, like reestablishing detention time, to get the receivers to do a better job. They are a huge choke point. The other thing is we don't have much land area left at LA Long Beach, Tacoma. It's a very long run up to Portland. Right now we're not even getting containers there. I'm working on a breakthrough. I have a port in my district, very short entrance, deep harbor, and it would be the only direct rail connection. I saved the rail line that goes to that port when one of those hedge funds tried to abandon it. We made them sell it. We bought it. We've been fixing it up, and we now have North Star, a big development company, has come in with a plan for a new container port, which would add 10% to our capacity with a direct rail link out of that port. So that, I think we need to think big if we're going to really deal with the supply chain backups.
Eugene?
Mr. Chairman, besides, in addition to the capacity at the ports, another issue that is really top of mind for freight executives is, and the fleets, is parking and inability to access parking. A two-part question here for you, Mr. Chairman. Did transportation policymakers in Congress do enough for truck parking in the infrastructure IIJA?
Definitively not. No.
So then, what is it that you intend to do in the near term on truck parking?
Well, I had $1 billion for grants for truck parking in my version of the Invest Act. Unfortunately, the Senate blew that off. I don't know why. I have no idea that they couldn't look at this as a crisis. There's, story after story. Again, just like the story I told about someone who's running out of time when they're waiting to get unloaded. There's, the industry is replete with stories of, okay, you get to a truck stop. It's, there's a couple of spaces there, but, you get enough time. Can you get to the next truck stop, and will there be spaces there? We're doing a little better job in terms of being able to look online, but a lot of times, no, you're going to have to stop early because the next truck stop, which you could make in your duty time, is full up. And then you end up having to park, in a dangerous spot, in an illegal spot, or whatever. No, this is a huge, huge crisis. I've discussed it with the White House. They've been, I've asked them to find some discretionary money. I don't know where it comes from, leftover COVID money, something else, to begin to incent, more truck parking with grants. So that's a work in progress with the administration. I don't believe I could, since the Senate wouldn't even put it in the major bill, I doubt that we'd be able to move an individual bill for truck parking.
So what do you see then as a solution then? Here we've got truck drivers, as you said, they're running right up against their hours of service, against the clock. They're parking sometimes in unsafe situations. One of the things that's been proposed is having the states make more available space at their rest areas and some of their facilities. What incentives can you offer that you think we can do to help this problem? Because as you said, the men and women who are driving and moving the freight, they often find, especially in certain parts of the country, it's a desperate situation.
Well, again, I think the best thing would be direct funding, grants, incentives, matching state funds or others with states. But I tell you, when I drive by the rest areas on I-5, and we don't have a whole heck of a lot of them in Oregon, the trucks are parked on the way in and on the way out. They can't even, and we have reserved generally a large part of our rest areas for truck parking, but it isn't adequate. And I know in other parts of the country, it's even worse. I think, and the states did get a pile of money from the feds in the rescue plan, and they are going to get, a major increase in about 40% in their formula funds in the IIJA. We've got to push them to begin to deal with the problem.
Eugene?
Mr. Chairman, Also on the IIJA, as you know, your Republican colleagues on the committee continue to call on the White House, the infrastructure coordinator, Mitch Landrieu, and the supply chain coordinator, John Porcari, to offer insight and more updates on the implementation of the law. I want to get your reaction to, if you could, to the ranking members on the committee seeking input on the implementation, and also where, what oversight are you anticipating to continue to conduct in the near term on the IIJA?
Well, we just had a meeting yesterday. I invited all of the subcommittee chairs, both sides of the aisle, with Mitch Landrieu. We spent over an hour with him. And I thought, he laid out, his plan in a way. I mean, there wasn't total agreement because the administration wants a little more emphasis on issues that will help deal with resiliency or climate. But I mean, he did lay out, and I mean, the Republicans said, well, we don't like this mandate on fix it first, and he said it's not a mandate. And they said, well, that's not what my governor says. Tell your governor to read the letter. It's guidance. It is not at all mandatory. So I think he cleared up a few things yesterday in that meeting. They've just, we've been blocked up because the Senate wouldn't pass the appropriations bill. So all the additional money and all the new programs have been in limbo. The continuing resolution said you can't touch the new money and you can't even begin to develop these new programs until the appropriations bills passed, which just happened last week. So now there's a big push on. They put up a website. I think it's called build.gov or something. I don't have it in front of me, but which has like 400 pages that in very well laid out. In terms of all the grants that are going to be available to people, in addition to the formula money that is going to be dramatically increased. So I think we had a good meeting yesterday. I mean, not everybody came away totally happy, but I think we cleared up a lot.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up on that, I am hearing that Republicans on the committee and also on the Senate side at EPW are going to formally ask for the FHWA December 16th memo to be rescinded. You talked about this, but could you, can I get your perspective on if that move is actually made official on behalf of the Republicans? I haven't heard that, and you might note that none of the ranking member Republicans on my committee voted for the IIJA, and in fact, only 12 Republicans in the House voted for the IIJA. They said it was too much money. When I passed the bill, they said it was too oriented toward climate change. It doesn't seem like they really want to do anything big on infrastructure. And when Shelley Moore Capito, held up a big poster board when Secretary Buttigieg was there last week and read from my bill about Fix It First, and she says, how do you explain this? And he said, ma'am, it's good policy. And it is good policy. We got 47 or 44,000 bridges on the national highway system that need either repair substantially or replacement. About 40% of the national highway system has degraded to the point where you have to rebed it and rebuild it, not just put another layer of asphalt on it. Fixing it first and preserving what we have makes a hell of a lot of sense before you're rushing out and doing new capacity while your bridges over here are falling down. So I doubt very much. And first of all, and again, it's only guidance. So if Texas wants to pave over the whole state and use their money to do that, have at it. But other states are taking a more enlightened view, I believe. Particularly in places like, Pittsburgh, where a bridge just fell down, and a bunch of other places where they're weight limited. I think truckers are pretty unhappy when they find their route is blocked by a weight limited bridge, and they've got to do some circuitous detour. So fixing it first makes a hell of a lot of sense to me.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that we're starting to see more in the trucking industry is this move towards autonomous vehicles. A number of companies, as you know, are testing AVs in the Southwest and in the Southeast in particular. I'm curious to get your take on where you think this particular segment of the trucking industry is going, and do you think that anytime soon we will see widespread adoption of autonomous vehicles, especially those that are being either controlled remotely or with a driver who may not be sitting in the left seat but maybe back in the sleeper cab? What's your thoughts on this?
Well, there's a lot of talk about platooning or remote monitoring and other issues. I don't think we're quite there yet. We've got some pilots going on. I mean, I've been following this very closely, and we're not there. And even the most advanced proposals are not going to try and deal with getting the truck, to the final destination in a city, or other complicated routes that are off the interstate. So there's still, I mean, it's still very much in progress. I mean, I've observed it. I've been briefed on it, but we're not quite there yet. And we've also got to worry about the fact that the FCC, who almost grounded the aviation industry because all they think about is profits for the telecoms, gave away half of our vehicle-to-vehicle communications. And that is going to be critical as we move more and more toward automated vehicles. Automated vehicles could be and will be, when fully developed, infinitely safer. And they will also be, we'll be able to get more throughput. The estimates I hear from engineers are we'll get twice as much throughput if everything was automated and working properly without any new lane models, which would be extraordinary, obviously. So there's a lot of promise there. It's just we're not quite at that point. And then obviously that raises issues with labor, which is going to be tough.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to give you the opportunity, and I do recognize this is a tad unfair because you've had a very long career in Congress, but as you finish your term here as chairman, could you share with us one or two highlights of your tenure leading the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee? And also if you could reflect on perhaps one or two policy points that perhaps were left on the cutting room floor that you wish, could have made it into law.
Well, sure. We're trying to reconstruct a lot. Remember 36 years going back through accomplishment memos, newsletters, news clips, and that sort of thing. I've done a lot of things that everybody's forgotten about, including me. But, things take a long time in this town, even really good common sense things. But finally, I started with Bud Schuster, not Bill Schuster, who subsequently became chair after 20 years after his dad retired, or 15, on trying to free up the Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund. There's a little ad valorem tax on the value of every good that comes in a container into every port. And Ronald Reagan thought it was a good idea that we should have a dedicated trust fund so we could maintain and build out our ports, because, to receive the goods and to ship the goods overseas. Well, for 25 years, I've been trying to do that. Meanwhile, the balance has been growing and growing, and it was about $10 billion. And finally, in the last Congress, I passed it out of committee unanimously, through the floor unanimously. The Senate couldn't take it up. I negotiated with Roger Wicker. We negotiated a slightly different version, pretty much the same. I took it back to the House. We passed it out again unanimously. The Senate still couldn't take it up. I mean, unbelievable, the dysfunction over there. Finally, then it had to go in the year-end appropriations deal. So then I had to negotiate individually with Senator Shelby, and he wanted changes. So he made some changes. And then we passed it again with the changes. And he put it in the final bill. So we're going to spend that down over 10 years instead of 5. But we're going to finally access that money. So I'm very proud of that. But that took 2.5 decades of work. And then if anybody's watched Netflix lately and seen the movie Downfall, I've always put a priority on aviation safety. And we conducted the most intense and largest investigation in the history of the committee into Boeing and the FAA on the Boeing MAX tragedies. And we totally reformed the way we certify airplanes, so we're not going to kill people for profit anymore, which is what happened in this case. That's a very short version of what was done there. So those are two things. There's a bunch more. Very early on, I partnering with Senator Packwood, I stopped the export of logs off federal land, which most people who don't live in a timber state might not think is really important. But we need that lumber here at home for housing, and we want to keep the prices down on lumber. And when you ship your best lumber off federal lands overseas, then your prices of what's left go way up. So that was early on. And then one other thing I've done throughout my career is when I was a county commissioner, the county was in very dire straits. The commissioners gave themselves a pay raise. People were only working 3/4 weeks. And I said, that's not right. I started giving back the pay raise. I got to Congress, and after I was here a few years, I was very concerned about the deficit. And, Congress gave itself a big raise, and I said, nah, I'm not going to take the raise. And I've funded around 400 scholarships for displaced workers at community colleges in my district since then. And I got a lot of satisfaction out of that. There's a few things. In terms of things that didn't get done, well, a big one for me was truck parking. That was, for the life of me, I don't know why the Senate wouldn't, another $1 billion in it, but why couldn't they do it? But I don't know. I don't know what that was about. And then the other issues are, I just mentioned one, which is the FCC impinging on both our surface transportation in terms of vehicle to vehicle. And we literally almost grounded aviation and went to visual flight rules only over the whole country over this 5G issue. So you can walk down the street and stream a movie anywhere. And we still haven't solved that. We've got a temporary abeyance of them lighting these things up full power. Unlike anywhere else in the world, the Air Force is testing what happens to the avionics when you fly close to one of these things. It's not good. And that is only a temporary abeyance with the industry until June. So that's going to be a big project for the rest of the year.
Congressman, you recently made a decision after 18 terms in the House, 36 years to retire. You're still healthy. You're still obviously got a lot of energy and passion for the job. Why now, though? Why to leave at this moment in time?
Well, the last big thing that escaped me within the jurisdiction of my committee was a major increase in surface transportation funding. When Obama was president, I moved a bill. I was subcommittee chair. I moved a bill out of my subcommittee. It would have increased spending by $350 billion, and the expectation was it would be user fee-based gas and diesel taxes. Obama was afraid of that. He sent down Ray LaHood and said, "Sorry, we're not going to support that bill." And I tried various iterations throughout the Obama administration, got nowhere. Trump came in. I thought, okay, guy's a builder. We're finally going to do it. We had that meeting at the White House. He bid us up to $2 trillion. And we're like, okay. We came back to have the discussion about how to pay for it. No, he left the room. So we finally got that done. It's not the policies I wanted. It doesn't include everything I wanted. My bill had more money in it. But that was the last major thing within my jurisdiction, within my power to get done. And that's policy is set for 5 years. I just felt, I've got one of the longest, I think I've got the longest lower 48 commute in America. When I go home on a weekend, it's at least 20 hours round trip. It's, just kind of tired of that. And I really hate fundraising. So I just decided, I could cap the career with this and move on and do something else.
Yeah, Congressman Young up in Alaska's got a little bit longer commute from his home district, but you're right. You're coming all the way from the Pacific Northwest. Eugene, any closing thoughts as we wrap up our conversation?
Chairman, if you want to add, maybe a silly question, but what are you going to miss most about Capitol Hill?
I'm going to miss my staff. I have always had fabulous staff. They've been very loyal. They stay with me a lot. I refer to them often as my portable memory units. I mean, I know a lot. People say, oh, you have such a mastery of the subject matter. I say, yeah, well, I'm kind of a dilettante when it comes to the experts that I employ on my staff and all the incredible work they've done on all these bills. So I'm going to miss them a lot.
Congressman DeFazio, thank you for joining us, and best of luck for the next chapter in your life. In closing, we want to thank Congressman Peter DeFazio, a Democrat from Oregon and the chairman of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, for being so generous with his time to answer our questions. Going forward, we're planning more of these newsmakers in the near future, and we'll have an announcement soon when the next webcast will take place and who our guest will be. Also, this webcast will be available for viewing on demand. Go to ttnews.com for more information about how you can watch our interview with Congressman Peter DeFazio and all of our guests during our TT Newsmakers series. On behalf of my colleague, Eugene Mulero, I'm Dan Ronan with Transport Topics and ttnews.com. Thank you always for watching.
Thank you for joining us today. For more information on future episodes, visit ttnews.com. This has been Transport Topics Newsmakers.